The vast courtyard of Buckingham Palace buzzed with a nervous energy that it wasn't the usual throng of tourists craning their necks for a glimpse of royalty. This was a different kind of anticipation, a controlled tension that hummed beneath the surface of the crisp London air. Bunting, freshly hung and meticulously aligned, fluttered gently in the breeze, a splash of color against the stoic gray stone of the palace walls. Today was the day. The President of the Republic of Eldoria was due to arrive, commencing a 3-day state visit designed to strengthen diplomatic ties and foster new trade agreements. Security was paramount. Every doorway, every window, every potential vantage point was manned by either a uniformed officer or a plainclothes security operative, their eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. Vehicles were checked and rechecked, sniffer dogs diligently patrolled the perimeter, and the air crackled with radio chatter as commands and updates were relayed across the network. This wasn't just about pomp and circumstance. This was about ensuring the safety and security of both the visiting dignitary and the royal family. The normally accessible areas of the courtyard were now cordoned off, creating a sterile zone reserved for official personnel and invited guests. Gardeners, usually meticulously tending to the flower beds, had been replaced by armed guards, their presence a stark reminder of the potential threats lurking beyond the palace gates. Even the pigeons, usually bold and brazen in their pursuit of discarded crumbs, seemed to sense the change in atmosphere and kept a respectful distance. The central focus of the courtyard was, as always, the iconic facade of Buckingham Palace itself. The changing of the guard ceremony, a daily spectacle for tourists, had been temporarily suspended, replaced by a more formal, less flamboyant display of royal authority. The Queen's Guard, resplendent in their scarlet tunics and bearskin hats, stood motionless at their posts, living embodiments of tradition and unwavering loyalty. Their presence was both reassuring and intimidating, a symbol of the enduring power of the monarchy. Amongst the heightened activity, a palpable sense of importance permeated the air. Everyone knew their role, every movement was carefully choreographed, and every detail meticulously planned. The upcoming state visit was a significant event, not just for the royal family, but for the entire nation. It was a chance to showcase British hospitality, to strengthen international relations, and to project an image of stability and strength to the world. And at the very heart of it all, standing guard, were the silent sentinels of Buckingham Palace, the royal guards, their unwavering presence a constant reminder of the traditions that underpin the monarchy. Cutting through the orchestrated activity with a sharp, purposeful stride came Commander Alastair Davies. His uniform was immaculate, every crease perfectly pressed, every button gleaming under the pale London sun. Ribbons adorned his chest, a testament to his distinguished service in various conflict zones and peacekeeping missions. He was a man who exuded authority, a natural leader forged in the crucible of combat and honed by years of rigorous training. Or, at least, that's the image he meticulously cultivated. Davies was, without a doubt, a capable officer. His tactical acumen was undeniable. His strategic thinking sharp and incisive. He had earned his rank through hard work and dedication, climbing the ladder with a relentless ambition that bordered on ruthlessness. However, beneath the polished exterior and the impressive array of medals lay a simmering insecurity, a need to constantly reaffirm his position and authority. He was a stickler for rules, a firm believer in the chain of command, and a staunch advocate for military discipline. To him, rank was not merely a title. It was a symbol of respect, a tangible representation of the sacrifices and responsibilities that came with leadership. He expected to be addressed with the appropriate deference, and he was quick to correct any perceived slight or breach of protocol. Some whispered that Davies was overly concerned with appearances, that his ambition often overshadowed his judgment. Others claimed he was a bully, using his rank to intimidate those beneath him. But whatever the truth, one thing was certain: Commander Davies was a force to be reckoned with. His assignment to oversee a portion of the security detail for the presidential visit was a significant step in his career. He saw it as an opportunity to showcase his organizational skills, his attention to detail, and his unwavering commitment to duty. He had pored over the security protocols, meticulously reviewing every contingency plan and ensuring that every possible threat was accounted for. He was determined to make this state visit a resounding success, not just for the country, but for his own career advancement. As he moved through the courtyard, he surveyed the scene with a critical eye, noting every detail, every potential vulnerability. He barked orders to his subordinates, ensuring that everyone was adhering to the prescribed procedures. He was a whirlwind of activity, a man on a mission, determined to leave his mark on this historic event. And as he approached the area where the royal guard stood sentinel, a subtle glint of anticipation flickered in his eyes that he knew the protocol. He knew the rules, but he also knew the power of rank, and he was about to test the boundaries of that power, standing ramrod straight. A silent sentinel against the backdrop of centuries of royal history was Private Thomas Miller. He was young, barely out of his teens, but his posture betrayed no hint of youthful exuberance or nervous apprehension. He was a royal guard, and he carried that responsibility with a weight far beyond his years. His uniform, like that of Commander Davies, was immaculate, but in a different way. It wasn't about personal presentation. It was about representing the crown, embodying the traditions of the British Army, and upholding the dignity of the monarchy. Miller had always been drawn to the military. That he admired the discipline, the camaraderie, and the sense of purpose that came with serving his country. He had excelled in his basic training, demonstrating a natural aptitude for precision and an unwavering commitment to following orders. But it was the opportunity to join the Royal Guard that truly ignited his passion. It was more than just a job. It was a calling, a chance to become part of something larger than himself. That he had undergone rigorous training, learning the intricate drills, the precise movements, and the unwavering stoicism that defined the Royal Guard. He had studied the history of the monarchy, the traditions of the palace, and the specific protocols that governed his every action. He understood the weight of his responsibility, the importance of his role, and the significance of his presence. Standing guard outside Buckingham Palace wasn't just about looking impressive. It was about providing a visible symbol of security, a reassuring presence in a world of uncertainty. It was about deterring potential threats, protecting the royal family, and upholding the values of the nation. And Private Miller took that responsibility very seriously. He was aware of the heightened security measures in place for the upcoming state visit. He knew that senior officers were patrolling the grounds, ensuring that every detail was perfect. He had even caught glimpses of Commander Davies, his imposing figure cutting a path through the organized chaos. Miller felt a flicker of nervousness whenever Davies passed by. The commander radiated an aura of authority that was both impressive and intimidating. Miller respected rank. He understood the chain of command, and he was always prepared to follow orders without question. But he also knew the royal protocols, drilled into him during his training. He knew the specific rules that governed his post, the limitations on his actions, and the consequences of any breach of conduct. As Commander Davies approached his post, Miller steeled himself, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that he might be tested, that his training would be put to the ultimate test. And he was determined to uphold his duty, no matter the cost. Commander Davies, buoyed by the success of the morning security sweeps and the flawless execution of his logistical plans, approached Private Miller's post with a renewed sense of self-importance. He felt a surge of pride, a quiet satisfaction in knowing that he was instrumental in ensuring the smooth and secure arrival of the President of Eldoria. The weight of responsibility sat comfortably on his shoulders. He was, in his own mind, the linchpin of this complex operation. He had just concluded a meeting with the head of the Metropolitan Police's Diplomatic Protection Group, ironing out the final details of the motorcade route and confirming the placement of strategically positioned surveillance teams. The meeting had gone exceptionally well, with the police chief praising Davies's meticulous planning and proactive approach. The praise had only served to inflate Davies's already considerable ego. As he neared Miller's position, Davies straightened his already impeccable uniform, subtly adjusting his tie and ensuring that his medals were prominently displayed. He cleared his throat, a barely audible sound, but one designed to draw attention to his presence. He expected the customary salute, the automatic gesture of respect that was due to his rank. It was a matter of principle, a recognition of the authority he commanded, and a confirmation of the established hierarchy. He had encountered several other guards during his rounds, and each had snapped to attention, offering a crisp, perfectly executed salute. It was a ritual he both expected and enjoyed, a validation of his position and a reassurance of the order he so meticulously maintained. He saw the upcoming encounter with Miller as simply another affirmation of his authority, another opportunity to reinforce the chain of command. Davies focused his gaze on Miller, meeting the young guard's eyes with a direct, unwavering stare. He expected to see a flicker of recognition, a brief moment of hesitation before the salute was rendered. He anticipated the crisp snap of the hand to the forehead, the slight inclination of the head, the unspoken acknowledgement of his superior rank. But as he drew closer, Davies noticed something different in Miller's eyes. There was no hesitation, no flicker of recognition, no hint of deference. Miller's gaze remained fixed straight ahead, his expression unreadable. His body as still and unyielding as the stone walls of the palace itself. A faint frown creased Davies's brow. Something was not right. This was not the customary greeting, not the expected response, and Commander Davies, a man accustomed to unwavering obedience, was about to encounter something entirely unexpected. Davies, initially surprised by Miller's lack of reaction, attributed it to a momentary lapse in attention, perhaps a young man momentarily overwhelmed by the pressure of the day. He decided to be more explicit, to leave no room for misinterpretation. He stopped directly in front of Miller, close enough to feel the heat radiating from the guard's scarlet tunic. He made deliberate, unwavering eye contact, locking his gaze onto Miller's with an intensity that was intended to be both commanding and slightly intimidating. He raised his chin slightly, a subtle gesture of authority, and allowed a pregnant pause to hang in the air. He wanted Miller to understand that he was being acknowledged, that his presence was not going unnoticed. He wanted to see the recognition dawn in the young guard's eyes, the realization that he was in the presence of a superior officer. When the salute still didn't materialize, Davies subtly cleared his throat again, this time a more pronounced sound, a deliberate attempt to break through Miller's seemingly impenetrable focus. It was a sound that carried a hint of impatience, a suggestion of displeasure. It was a signal, clear and unambiguous, that a response was expected, but still, nothing. Private Miller remained motionless, an unyielding statue carved from flesh and bone. His eyes, fixed on some distant point beyond the palace gates, betrayed no sign that he had even registered Davies's presence. He stood as if deaf and blind, completely oblivious to the high-ranking officer standing directly in front of him. The silence stretched, becoming thick and heavy, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city and the murmur of radio chatter from the security personnel. Davies felt a flicker of irritation, a sense of being deliberately ignored. He prided himself on his ability to command attention, to elicit obedience with a mere glance. The fact that this young guard was seemingly immune to his authority was both perplexing and infuriating. He considered speaking, issuing a direct order for Miller to salute him. But something held him back. He wasn't entirely sure why. Perhaps it was the presence of other officers in the vicinity, the unspoken fear of making a scene. Or perhaps it was a nagging doubt, a faint whisper in the back of his mind that suggested he might be missing something, that there might be a legitimate reason for Miller's apparent insubordination. Whatever the reason, Davies hesitated. He continued to stand there, locked in a silent battle of wills with a young guard who seemed determined to ignore his very existence. The snub was palpable, the defiance unmistakable, and Commander Davies, a man who thrived on respect and obedience, was beginning to feel the sting of humiliation. The simmering frustration within Davies finally boiled over. The subtle cues, the pointed stares, the cleared throats, all had failed to elicit the desired response. The humiliation was becoming unbearable. He could feel the eyes of others on him, the unspoken judgment of his peers. He needed to regain control, to reassert his authority, to put an end to this embarrassing charade. He took a step closer to Miller, his face now inches from the young guard's impassive expression. He drew himself up to his full height, puffing out his chest and projecting an aura of raw power. He opened his mouth, and the words that came out were sharp, clipped, and delivered with the force of a thunderclap. "Private, I am Commander Davies. I am ordering you to salute me. Do you understand?" The words echoed across the courtyard, momentarily silencing the surrounding activity. The murmur of radio chatter faded, the footsteps of patrolling officers ceased, and the distant sounds of the city seemed to recede. All eyes turned towards the scene unfolding between the high-ranking officer and the unyielding royal guard. Several onlookers paused in their duties, their curiosity piqued by the unexpected outburst. A group of junior officers, huddled together near a transport vehicle, exchanged nervous glances. A senior non-commissioned officer, leaning against a palace wall, raised an eyebrow in mild surprise. Even a pair of tourists, who had somehow managed to slip past the security cordon, stopped to gawk, their cameras momentarily forgotten. Davies's voice, amplified by the sudden silence, carried a clear message of anger and authority. He had emphasized his rank, leaving no doubt as to his position within the military hierarchy. That he had issued a direct order, demanding immediate Obedience that he expected Miller to snap to attention, to render the required salute, to acknowledge his superior authority without further delay. But even as the echoes of his command reverberated through the courtyard, Private Miller remained motionless, his eyes, still fixed on the distant horizon, betrayed no sign that he had even heard Davies's outburst. He stood as if carved from stone, an unyielding symbol of tradition and unwavering resolve. The tension in the courtyard became almost unbearable. The onlookers held their breath, unsure of what would happen next. They watched with a mixture of fascination and apprehension, wondering if this was a simple case of insubordination or something far more complex. And Commander Davies, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment, waited for a response that seemed increasingly unlikely to come. The silence that followed his command was deafening, a stark and powerful rebuke to his authority. The silence that followed Davies's outburst was profound, a thick, suffocating blanket that stifled the courtyard. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the weight of expectation, the unspoken question hanging in the air. Would Miller finally break? Would he succumb to the pressure and render the salute? Or would he continue to defy Davies, to stand as an unyielding symbol of something larger than rank and authority? Miller remained an enigma. His face was an impassive mask, his eyes fixed on some unseen point in the distance. There was no flicker of emotion, no hint of defiance, no sign that he had even registered Davies's presence, let alone his direct order. He was a statue brought to life, a silent testament to the power of tradition and unwavering resolve. The tension in the courtyard was now almost tangible. It crackled in the air like static electricity, prickling the skin and tightening the muscles. The onlookers held their breath, their eyes darting between Davies and Miller, unsure of what to expect. The junior officers fidgeted nervously, the senior NCO maintained his stoic facade, and even the tourists seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. Their initial curiosity replaced by a sense of unease. Davies's face, already flushed with anger and embarrassment, began to deepen in color. His neck strained against his collar, and a vein throbbed visibly in his forehead. He clenched his fists, his knuckles turning white. He was a man on the verge of losing control, his carefully constructed facade of authority crumbling under the weight of Miller's unwavering silence. He opened his mouth to speak again, to unleash another torrent of angry words, but he hesitated as he realized that any further escalation would only serve to make him look even more foolish, even more out of control. He was trapped in a situation of his own making, a prisoner of his own pride and arrogance. The silence stretched on, each second feeling like an eternity. Davies could feel the judgment of the onlookers, the unspoken criticism of his peers. He was a man of action, a man of authority, but in this moment, he was powerless. He was at the mercy of a young guard who seemed determined to defy him, to expose his weakness, to undermine his authority. The silence was Miller's weapon, his shield, his ultimate act of defiance, and with each passing second, it became more and more effective. Davies, trapped in the spotlight of the courtyard, was beginning to feel the full weight of his humiliation. The silence was deafening. Powerful rebuke to his authority, a stark reminder that even rank didn't override royal protocol. Behind Private Miller's impassive mask, a storm raged. His mind, usually a calm and disciplined space, was now a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. The commander's shouted order had been like a physical blow, shaking him to his core. Every instinct screamed at him to obey, to snap to attention, to render the salute that was due to a superior officer. Years of training, ingrained discipline, and a deep-seated respect for the chain of command all urged him to comply. But another voice, equally powerful and equally insistent, held him back. It was the voice of his instructors, the voice of tradition, the voice of royal protocol. He remembered the countless hours spent memorizing the intricate rules and regulations that governed his every action as a royal guard. He recalled the specific instructions regarding saluting protocols within the palace grounds, the unwavering emphasis on the unique circumstances that dictated when and to whom a salute was permitted. His mind flashed back to the training sessions, the stern faces of his instructors, the unwavering emphasis on the importance of absolute obedience to royal protocol. He remembered the section on the specific duties assigned to guards posted at the palace facade. The instructors had been particularly emphatic about the fact that guards on that post did not salute anyone, regardless of rank, unless a member of the royal family was present. The reason was simple. Their duty was to the crown, and their undivided attention was to be given to the security of the palace and its inhabitants. Saluting anyone else would be a distraction, a momentary lapse in vigilance that could have dire consequences. He vividly recalled the warnings about the consequences of breaking protocol. Disciplinary action was a certainty, but the potential repercussions extended far beyond a simple reprimand. A breach of protocol could be interpreted as a sign of disrespect to the crown, a failure to uphold the traditions of the monarchy, a threat to the security of the palace. The penalties could range from demotion to dismissal, and in extreme cases, even imprisonment. He remembered one particularly chilling anecdote about a guard who had inadvertently saluted the wrong person and had been immediately relieved of his duties and subjected to a lengthy investigation. The guard's career had been ruined, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. The message was clear. Protocol was paramount, and any deviation from the established rules would be met with swift and severe punishment. As Davies's angry words echoed in his ears, Miller felt a surge of panic. That he knew that he was defying a direct order, that he was risking his career, his reputation, and perhaps even his freedom. But he also knew that he was upholding his duty, that he was protecting the traditions of the monarchy, and that he was remaining true to the oath he had sworn. The internal conflict raged within him, a battle between obedience and duty, between fear and resolve. And as the silence stretched on, Miller knew that he could not and would not break. The reason for Miller's unwavering silence, the key to understanding his seemingly insubordinate behavior, lay in a long-standing tradition, a deeply ingrained royal protocol that superseded even the most explicit military orders. It was a protocol born from centuries of royal history, a subtle yet powerful symbol of unwavering loyalty and undivided attention. Royal guards stationed at the specific posts along the Buckingham Palace facade, including the one manned by Private Miller, were under strict orders not to salute anyone, regardless of their rank or status, unless the monarch or a direct member of the royal family was present. This wasn't a matter of disrespect or a slight to the military hierarchy. It was a deliberate and carefully considered decision designed to ensure the absolute security of the palace and its inhabitants. The rationale behind this protocol was simple. The guards' primary duty was to the crown. Their undivided attention had to be focused on the surrounding environment, scanning for potential threats, observing any suspicious activity, and remaining constantly vigilant. A salute, even a brief one, would represent a momentary lapse in concentration, a fleeting distraction that could have catastrophic consequences. The tradition stemmed from a time when threats to the monarchy were more overt and immediate. While the nature of those threats had evolved over time, the principle remained the same. The security of the royal family was paramount, and no potential risk, however small, could be tolerated. The silent, unyielding presence of the royal guards served as a constant reminder of this unwavering commitment. Furthermore, the refusal to salute anyone other than the monarch or a direct royal family member symbolized the guards' undivided loyalty to the crown. They were not simply soldiers following orders. They were guardians of the monarchy, protectors of the realm, and embodiments of the enduring traditions of the British Empire. Their silence was not a sign of disrespect. It was a powerful statement of allegiance, a visual representation of their unwavering devotion to the Queen and her successors. The protocol was deeply symbolic, highlighting that their loyalty transcended even the standard military chain of command. This long-standing tradition was not widely known outside of the Royal Guard and the higher echelons of the military. It was a subtle nuance, a hidden layer of meaning that underscored the unique role of the Royal Guards and the enduring power of royal protocol. And it was this very protocol that was now at the heart of the conflict between Commander Davies and Private Miller, a conflict that was about to reach its inevitable conclusion. Just as Davies was about to erupt in another fit of frustrated anger, a figure emerged. From the periphery of the gathering onlookers. It was Major Thornton, a veteran officer with decades of service and a reputation for both wisdom and discretion. He had witnessed the entire exchange from a distance, his expression a mixture of concern and amusement. He understood the intricacies of royal protocol, the nuances of military tradition, and the delicate balance between rank and respect. Thornton approached Davies with a calm, measured stride, his movements betraying no hint of the urgency he felt. He knew that Davies was on the verge of making a serious mistake, one that could have lasting repercussions for his career and his reputation. He also knew that Davies, in his current state of agitation, was unlikely to listen to reason unless it was delivered with the utmost tact and diplomacy. "Alistair," Thornton said, his voice low and soothing, barely audible above the distant sounds of the city. "Perhaps we could have a word in private." Davies, startled by Thornton's unexpected appearance, turned to face him, his expression a mixture of confusion and annoyance. "What is it, Michael? Can't you see I'm dealing with a situation here?" Thornton nodded slowly, his eyes conveying a message of understanding and caution. "Indeed, I can, Alistair, and I believe I may be able to offer some clarification." He subtly gestured towards Miller with a barely perceptible tilt of his head, perhaps regarding the specific protocols in place at this location. Davies frowned, his brow furrowed in confusion. "Protocols? What protocols? The man is refusing to obey a direct order. That's insubordination, plain and simple." Thornton placed a hand gently on Davies's arm, his touch firm but reassuring. "With all due respect, Alistair, I believe there may be more to it than that. Allow me to explain." He lowered his voice even further, almost to a whisper. "The guards stationed at the palace facade operate under a unique set of instructions. They are not permitted to salute anyone, regardless of rank, unless a member of the royal family is present. It's a long-standing tradition, a symbol of their undivided loyalty to the crown." Davies stared at Thornton, his expression slowly shifting from anger to disbelief. "Are you serious, Michael? That's absurd. Why wasn't I informed of this?" Thornton shrugged, his expression apologetic. "It's a rather obscure detail, Alistair, easily overlooked in the midst of all the preparations for the state visit. But trust me, it's true. The guards are simply following orders, adhering to protocol." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "In this case, Alistair, rank doesn't override royal protocol." The realization washed over Davies like a cold wave, extinguishing the fire of his anger and replacing it with a chilling sense of embarrassment. He understood now he had been wrong, utterly and completely wrong. He had allowed his pride and his ambition to cloud his judgment, leading him to make a foolish and public blunder. He glanced around the courtyard, his eyes darting nervously from face to face. He could see the knowing looks, the barely concealed smirks, the subtle shakes of the head. The junior officers, who had previously regarded him with a mixture of awe and fear, now seemed to be exchanging glances of amusement. The senior NCO, who had always been impeccably respectful, now wore a look of thinly veiled disdain. Even the tourists, who had initially been captivated by the drama, now seemed to be pitying him. He tried to recover, to salvage what little dignity he had left. He straightened his uniform, cleared his throat, and adopted a more composed demeanor that he attempted to project. An air of nonchalance, as if the entire incident had been a minor misunderstanding, a mere oversight that was of no real consequence. "Well, Michael," he said, his voice strained but attempting to sound casual. "Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I was obviously unaware of the specific nuances of this particular posting." He turned towards Miller, offering a curt nod of acknowledgement. "Carry on, Private." But the damage was done. The onlookers had witnessed his outburst, his blatant display of arrogance, his complete lack of awareness of the royal protocol. They had seen him reduced from a commanding officer to a humiliated figure, a man who had been publicly corrected by a subordinate. He knew that the story would spread, that the incident would become a legend within the ranks, a cautionary tale about the dangers of pride and the importance of respecting tradition. He could already imagine the whispers, the jokes, the subtle digs that would follow him for years to come. His carefully cultivated image of authority and competence had been shattered, replaced by a perception of arrogance and ignorance. His chances of career advancement, which had seemed so promising just hours before, now seemed to be hanging precariously in the balance. As he turned and walked away from Miller's post, Davies felt a profound sense of humiliation. He had learned a valuable lesson, a lesson that he would not soon forget. He had discovered that even the most decorated officer, the most ambitious leader, the most powerful commander, was ultimately subject to the enduring power of royal protocol. And in that moment, he understood, perhaps for the first time, that true authority came not from rank, but from knowledge, respect, and a deep understanding of the traditions that underpinned the monarchy. As Commander Davies turned and walked away, His shoulders slumped with defeat. A wave of profound relief washed over Private Miller, but he remained rigidly at attention, his eyes still fixed on the distant horizon, his face an impassive mask. But beneath the surface, his heart was pounding with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. He had done it. He had upheld his duty. He had stood firm against the immense pressure of a superior officer. He had remained true to his training, to his oath, and to the traditions of the Royal Guard. He had faced the potential consequences of insubordination, the risk of disciplinary action, the threat to his career, and he had emerged victorious. The internal conflict that had raged within him just moments before now subsided, replaced by a quiet sense of satisfaction. He had been tested, and he had proven himself worthy of the uniform he wore, the responsibility he carried, and the trust that had been placed in him. That he knew that he had been right to stand his ground, that he had followed the correct protocol, that he had upheld the traditions of the monarchy. But that knowledge didn't diminish the sense of relief he felt. He had been acutely aware of the potential repercussions of his actions, the possibility that Davies would have escalated the situation, that he would have faced serious consequences for his perceived insubordination. He had seen the anger in Davies's eyes, the frustration in his voice, the barely concealed contempt in his expression. He had felt the weight of the commander's authority, the pressure to comply, the fear of reprisal, and yet he had remained steadfast, unyielding, and true to his duty. That he knew that he had been fortunate, that Major Thornton's timely intervention had prevented the situation from escalating further. He was grateful for the Major's wisdom, his discretion, and his understanding of the nuances of royal protocol. As the tension in the courtyard gradually subsided, Miller allowed himself a small, almost imperceptible sigh of relief. He knew that he had done the right thing, that he had upheld his duty, and that he had earned the respect of his fellow guards. Even if they couldn't express it openly, he continued to stand at attention, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, his body as still and unyielding as the stone walls of the palace itself. But inside, he was filled with a quiet sense of pride, a profound sense of accomplishment, and a deep sense of gratitude for having been given the opportunity to serve his country and to uphold the traditions of the monarchy. He had faced a daunting challenge, and he had emerged victorious. He was a royal guard, and he had proven himself worthy of the name. The air in the courtyard remained thick with unspoken tension. The onlookers, though resuming their duties, continued to cast surreptitious glances in the direction of Private Miller and the retreating figure of Commander Davies. The incident had left an indelible mark on the atmosphere, a subtle but pervasive reminder of the delicate balance between rank and tradition. Davies, his earlier arrogance, completely evaporated, now moved with a subdued demeanor. He avoided eye contact with anyone, his gaze fixed firmly on the ground. As he made his way towards the relative anonymity of the palace interior, he felt the weight of his humiliation with every step, the sting of his public blunder a constant reminder of his misjudgment. As he passed by Miller's post one last time, he paused momentarily, his face etched with a mixture of shame and resentment. He knew that he couldn't simply ignore the young guard, that he had to acknowledge, in some small way, the mistake he had made. But he also couldn't bring himself to offer a sincere apology, to openly admit that he had been wrong. Instead, he mumbled a few barely audible words in Miller's direction, his tone grudging and insincere. "Carry on, Private," and, "well done." It wasn't an apology, not exactly, but it was the closest Davies could bring himself to get to one. It was a perfunctory acknowledgement, a subtle concession, a grudging admission that he had been mistaken. He didn't wait for a response, didn't dare to meet Miller's gaze. He simply muttered the words and hurried on, his pace quickening as he put as much distance as possible between himself and the scene of his humiliation. The change in Davies's demeanor was striking. His earlier confidence and swagger had vanished, replaced by a visible embarrassment that was almost palpable. He moved with a hunched posture, his shoulders slumped, his face downcast. He was a man deflated, a leader humbled, an officer stripped of his pride. As he disappeared through the palace doors, Davies left behind him a courtyard that was forever changed. The incident had served as a powerful reminder to everyone present that rank didn't always equate to authority, that tradition could override even the most explicit military orders, and that true leadership required not just competence and ambition, but also humility and respect. And it had left Private Miller standing tall, a silent symbol of unwavering duty. And, with Davies gone, the courtyard slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. The other officers resumed their patrols, the palace staff continued their preparations for the state visit, and the tourists, now armed with a memorable anecdote, snapped photos with renewed enthusiasm. But for Private Miller, the incident was far from over. That he remained at his post, standing rigidly at attention, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon. But his mind was racing, replaying the events of the past few minutes, analyzing his actions, and reflecting on the lessons he had learned. He realized, with a newfound clarity, the immense importance of tradition, the enduring power of royal protocol, and the weight of his responsibility as a royal guard. He had always understood these concepts intellectually, but now he had experienced them firsthand, in a way that had transformed his understanding from abstract theory to concrete reality. He reflected on the conflict between his ingrained respect for rank and his unwavering commitment to protocol. He had been trained to obey orders without question, to follow the chain of command without hesitation. But in this instance, he had been forced to choose between following a direct order and upholding a long-standing tradition. And he had chosen tradition, knowing full well the potential consequences of his actions. He realized that upholding protocol was sometimes more difficult than following direct orders. It required courage, conviction, and a willingness to stand your ground, even in the face of immense pressure. It demanded a deep understanding of the history and traditions of the monarchy, and an unwavering commitment to upholding those traditions, no matter the cost. He thought about Commander Davies, his arrogance, his anger, his eventual humiliation. He felt a twinge of sympathy for the officer, recognizing that Davies had simply been unaware of the specific protocol governing his post. But he also understood that Davies's ignorance was no excuse for his behavior, that a true leader should always strive to understand the nuances of every situation, to respect the traditions of the institution they serve, and to treat their subordinates with dignity and respect. He reflected on the importance of his role as a royal guard, the significance of his presence at the palace facade, and the symbolic weight of his silence. He was not just a soldier following orders. He was a guardian of the monarchy, a protector of the realm, and an embodiment of the enduring traditions of the British Empire. And he had a duty to uphold those traditions, even when it meant defying a superior officer. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the courtyard, Miller felt a sense of pride, a sense of accomplishment, and a deep sense of gratitude for having been given the opportunity to serve his country and to uphold the traditions of the monarchy. He knew that he would never forget this day, that the lessons he had learned would stay with him for the rest of his life. And he knew that he was ready to continue his duty, to stand tall, to remain silent, and to protect the crown no matter what challenges lay ahead. The state visit of the president of Eldoria proceeded without a hitch. The security measures, meticulously planned and flawlessly executed, ensured the safety and well-being of both the visiting dignitary and the royal family. The motorcade moved smoothly through the streets of London. The surveillance teams maintained a constant vigil, and the palace grounds remained secure and protected. The official events unfolded with precision and grace. The state banquet was a glittering affair, the diplomatic discussions were productive and fruitful, and the cultural exchanges were enriching and engaging. The visit was a resounding success, a triumph of diplomacy and a showcase of British hospitality. But beneath the veneer of flawless execution and diplomatic harmony, the incident involving Commander Davies and Private Miller lingered in the minds of those who had witnessed it. It served as a subtle reminder that even amidst the pomp and circumstance of a state visit, the true hierarchy within the palace walls remained unchanged. The incident had exposed the limitations of rank, the enduring power of tradition, and the unwavering importance of protocol. It had demonstrated that even the most decorated officer, the most ambitious leader, the most powerful commander, was ultimately subject to the rules and customs of the monarchy. It had also highlighted the significance of the royal guard, their unwavering dedication to duty, and their unyielding commitment to upholding the traditions of the crown. They were not simply soldiers following orders. They were guardians of the monarchy, protectors of the realm, and embodiments of the enduring values of the British Empire. The story of Davies and Miller spread quickly through the palace, becoming a whispered anecdote, a cautionary tale, a subtle joke. It was a reminder that true authority came not just from rank, but from knowledge, respect, and a deep understanding of the traditions that underpin the monarchy. The success of the state visit was a testament to the professionalism and competence of everyone involved. But the incident with Davies and Miller served as a subtle counterpoint, a reminder that even in the midst of the most elaborate preparations, the most meticulous planning, and the most flawless execution, the human element could still play a significant role. The state visit concluded with a sense of accomplishment and relief. The president of Eldoria departed, the security measures were scaled back, and the palace began to return to its normal routine. But the memory of the incident with Davies and Miller remained, a subtle but pervasive reminder that even in the most modern and sophisticated of institutions, the weight of tradition could still be felt, and the power of protocol could still prevail. The incident in the Buckingham Palace courtyard became a turning point in Commander Davies's career. The initial sting of humiliation gradually faded, replaced by a deeper understanding of leadership, tradition, and the importance of humility. He never forgot the look on Private Miller's face, the unwavering stillness, the silent defiance that had exposed his own arrogance and ignorance. The experience forced him to confront his own flaws, to examine his leadership style, and to reconsider his approach to command. He realized that he had been too focused on rank, too concerned with appearances, and too quick to enforce rules without understanding the context or the underlying rationale. That he began to listen more attentively to his subordinates, to solicit their opinions, and to value their insights. He recognized that true leadership was not about barking orders and demanding obedience. It was about fostering a culture of respect, trust, and understanding. He made a conscious effort to learn more about the history and traditions of the military, to understand the nuances of royal protocol, and to appreciate the significance of the institutions he served. He realized that true authority came not from simply holding a high rank, but from earning the respect of those around him through knowledge, humility, and integrity. The incident subtly changed his leadership style. He became less autocratic, more collaborative, and more empathetic. He started to lead by example, demonstrating a willingness to learn from his mistakes and to acknowledge the expertise of others. He also developed a newfound respect for the Royal Guard, recognizing their unwavering dedication to duty, their unyielding commitment to tradition, and their silent strength in the face of adversity. He understood that they were not simply ceremonial figures. They were guardians of the monarchy, protectors of the realm, and embodiments of the enduring values of the British Empire. Over time, Davies's reputation began to improve. He was no longer seen as an arrogant and ambitious officer, but as a wise and thoughtful leader, a man who had learned from his mistakes and had emerged stronger and more compassionate. He continued to rise through the ranks, eventually achieving the rank of general. But he never forgot the lesson he had learned in the Buckingham Palace courtyard, the lesson that had taught him the true meaning of leadership and the enduring power of royal protocol. And he always made a point of treating his subordinates with respect, recognizing that true authority came not from rank, but from knowledge, humility, and a deep understanding of the traditions that underpinned the military. The encounter with Private Miller had shaped his career and his character, transforming him from an ambitious officer into a respected leader. The story of Commander Davies and Private Miller, though seemingly a minor incident in the grand scheme of palace life, became a powerful symbol of the enduring strength of royal protocol and the unwavering dedication of those who uphold it. Was a reminder that even in the modern world, where rank and authority often hold sway, there are still institutions and traditions that transcend the ordinary, that command respect, and that demand unwavering adherence. The incident highlighted the delicate balance between military discipline and royal tradition, the subtle nuances of palace life, and the importance of understanding the context in which rules are applied. It was a lesson in humility for Commander Davies, a validation of duty for Private Miller, and a reminder to everyone involved that true authority came not just from rank, but from knowledge, respect, and a deep understanding of the traditions that underpin the monarchy. The enduring power of royal protocol lay not just in its historical significance, but in its ability to adapt to changing times while maintaining its core values. It was a living tradition, constantly evolving, but always rooted in the principles of loyalty, duty, and unwavering service to the crown. And the dedication of those who upheld the protocol, the royal guards, was a testament to their commitment to these values. They were not simply soldiers following orders. They were guardians of the monarchy, protectors of the realm, and embodiments of the enduring spirit of the British Empire. Their silence was not a sign of weakness. It was a symbol of strength, declaration of allegiance, and a reminder that some things are more important than personal ambition or individual recognition. The image of Private Miller, standing unwavering at his post, his face an impassive mask, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon, became a lasting symbol of this principle. He was a young man, barely out of his teens, but he had demonstrated a courage, a conviction, and a commitment to duty that belied his age. He had stood firm against the pressure of a superior officer. He had upheld the traditions of the monarchy, and he had proven himself worthy of the uniform he wore. His silence spoke volumes, conveying a message of unwavering loyalty, unyielding strength, and